This lecture will examine the region of Southeast Asia through its environment and physical geography, population and settlement patterns, cultural diversity and cohesion, geopolitical framework, and economic and social development. More specifically, 1. Identify the key environmental differences between the equatorial belt of insular Southeast Asia and the higher latitude zone of mainland Southeast Asia. 2. Explain how environmental differences influenced human settlement and economic development. 3. Describe the driving forces behind deforestation and habitat loss in the different regions of Southeast Asia. 4. Explain how the interaction of tectonic plates and the resulting volcanism and seismic activity have influenced Southeast Asian history and development. 5. Show how the differences among plantation agriculture, rice growing, and swidden cultivation in Southeast Asia have molded settlement patterns. 6. Describe the role of primate cities and other massive urban centers in the development of Southeast Asia. 7. Outline the ways in which religions from other parts of the world have spread throughout Southeast Asia, including how religious diversity has influenced the history of the region. 8. Identify the controversies surrounding cultural globalization in Southeast Asia, explaining why some people in the region welcome the process where others resist it. 9. Trace the origin and spread of ASEAN and explain how this organization has influenced geopolitical relations in the region. 10. Describe the major ethnic conflicts in Southeast Asia, showing why certain countries in the region have such deep problems in this regard. And finally, 11. Explain why levels of economic and social development vary so widely across the Southeast Asia region. Southeast Asia consists of 11 countries that vary widely in spatial extent, population, cultural attributes, and levels of economic and social development. Geographically, the region is commonly divided into an Asian mainland zone and the islands or the insular realm. However, Malaysia is split between the two. Part of the country lies on the mainland and the other part in the insular realm on the northern part of the island of Borneo. 10 of the countries belong to the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, which is an organization that promotes economic integration in this region. Geopolitically, this region is divided between communism, allied with China and former Soviet Union, and capitalism, allied with the Western world. Southeast Asia as a whole contains some of the world's most globalized economies, especially with Singapore, and some of its most isolated and impoverished, such as Laos. It has also experienced marked periods of boom and bust in recent decades, therefore making it highly vulnerable to fluctuations in the global economy. This region includes the large peninsula in the southeastern corner of Asia, as well as a vast number of islands scattered to the south and east. It is conventionally divided into two subregions: Mainland Southeast Asia, which includes Burma, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam, and Insular Southeast Asia, which includes Indonesia, the Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei, Singapore, and East Timor. Malaysia includes the tip of the mainland peninsula and most of the northern part of the island of Borneo. Malaysia also shares the northern part of the island of Borneo with Brunei, a very small country in the terms of land area, and the larger southern part that is claimed by Indonesia. In addition, Malaysia also shares the very tip of the mainland peninsula with the country of Singapore, also small in land area size. But don't let the size of Singapore fool you. It is one of the major players in the global economy. Mainland Southeast Asia is an area of rugged uplands interspersed with broad lowlands and deltas associated with large rivers. The northern boundary of this region lies within a cluster of mountains connected to the highlands of eastern Tibet and south-central China, in which large rivers flow southward through the mainland to the South China Sea and Gulf of Thailand. The Mekong Delta, as shown in the photo, in southern Vietnam encompasses a complex maze of waterways. Extensive tracts of fertile farmland lie between the canals and river channels. The waterways are used for transportation and provide large quantities of fish and other aquatic resources. The mainland area is also subject to monsoon climates. On the other hand, the insular region is much different. It is a large expanse and collection of island environment. A unique feature in the subregion is the Sunda Shelf, a tectonic feature that produces the largest expanse of shallow sea above it, mainly in the Java Sea, between the island of Borneo and Indonesia. Here the waters are generally less than 200 feet deep. Because of the tectonic plate boundary convergence in this area, the islands experience many volcano eruptions and earthquakes, especially on the islands of Indonesia, which occasionally result in tsunamis. Insular Southeast Asia is noted for its widespread volcanism, which has created fertile soils in many areas, while also generating many natural hazards. The eruption of Bromo volcano, as shown in the photo on the left, on the island of Java in Indonesia took place on January 22, 2011. The Philippines has suffered several devastating tropical storms in recent years, including Typhoon Baba in 2012 and Typhoon Haiyan in 2013, which has been the most powerful tropical storm to make landfall in recorded history. The devastation of Typhoon Haiyan is shown in the photo on the right. The climates of the islands are heavily influenced by their equatorial location, which reduces seasonality, as does the maritime nature of the region. Most of the insular Southeast Asia is characterized by the constantly hot and humid climates of the equatorial zone. Mainland, on the other hand, has the seasonally wet and dry climates of the tropical monsoon and tropical savanna types. Only in the far north are subtropical climates with relatively cool winters. The northern half of the region is strongly influenced by the seasonality shifting monsoon winds. Northeastern Southeast Asia, and especially the Philippines, often experiences typhoons from August to October. Typhoons are the same weather phenomena as hurricanes. The only difference between them is the term used, which describes their location. Deforestation is a severe problem in this region. This is due mostly to the world's demand for wood products, transforming forests into farmlands in order to increase food production and relieve population pressures on urban areas. This was once one of the most heavily forested regions in the world. Most of the tropical forests of Thailand, the Philippines, peninsular Malaysia, Sumatra, and Java, however, have been destroyed by a combination of commercial logging and agricultural settlement. The forests of Borneo, Burma, Laos, and Vietnam, moreover, are now being rapidly cleared. National park areas, especially in Indonesia, have been created to stave off further deforestation and protect wildlife habitats. Fires from logging and peatlands, water and urban air pollution, as well as soil erosion, is also widespread. Some examples of environmental issues are deforestation from logging and peat fires. Extensive deforestation has occurred on the island of Borneo in recent years, as shown in the photo on the left. The line between forest and cleared lands is often quite sharp. In addition, the soil of most wetland areas in Southeast Asia is composed largely of peat, an organic substance that can burn when dry. Draining for agricultural expansion, as well as drought, often results in extensive peat fires, which also causes extensive air pollution. As shown in the photo on the right, a C-130 airplane is dropping water on burning peat in Lampung, Sumatra. Most of Southeast Asia's people live in coastal and delta environments, making the region particularly vulnerable to the rise in sea level associated with global warming. Furthermore, all Southeast Asian countries have ratified the 1997 Kyoto Protocol, but since they are officially considered developing countries, none are obligated to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. In addition, Indonesia is the third largest emitter of greenhouse gases in the world, behind the US and China. Much of this emission comes from the slash and burn techniques of logging and naturally occurring peatland fires. Most renewable energy in the region comes from hydropower and geothermal plants. Owing to its geologically active location with numerous volcanoes, the Philippines is one of the leading countries of the world in geothermal power production. A geothermal plant in the Philippines is shown in the photo. Video question 1. Please pause the video and answer the following. Compare and contrast the physical geography of mainland and insular Southeast Asia. In your own words, using the text as a guide, be thorough and specific with your answer. With just over 600 million inhabitants, this region is not heavily populated by Asian standards. One of the reasons for this relatively low density is the extensive tracts of rugged mountains, which generally remain thinly inhabited. In contrast, relatively dense populations are found in the region's deltas, coastal areas, and zones of fertile volcanic soil. More specifically, on the mainland, the population is concentrated in the valleys and deltas of the region's largest rivers. In their intervening uplands, population density remains relatively low. In Indonesia, density is extremely high on Java, an island noted for its fertile soil and large cities. Some of Indonesia's outer islands, especially those of the east, remain lightly settled. Overall, population density is high in the Philippines, especially in central Luzon. In the uplands, swidden agriculture, which is a slash and burn technique, as shown in the photo on the left, is widely practiced. In the swidden system, small plots of tropical forest or brush are periodically cut or slashed by hand. The fallen vegetation is then burned to transfer nutrients to the soil before subsistent crops are planted. When done by tribal peoples with low population densities, swidden is not environmentally harmful. When practiced by large numbers of immigrants from the lowlands, however, swidden can cause deforestation and extensive soil erosion. When swidden can no longer support the local population, upland people sometimes adapt by switching to cash crops, such as opium in the northern mountains called the Golden Triangle. With European colonization, this region became the center of plantation agriculture, producing high-value specialty crops ranging from rice to rubber. Most of the world's natural rubber is produced on plantations in this region. The photo on the right shows a rubber tree being tapped on the island of Sumatra in Indonesia. Most Southeast Asian countries have seen a sharp decrease in birth rates over the past several decades. Because the region is not facing the same kind of population pressure as East or South Asia, governments have promoted a wide range of population policies. In countries with a highly uneven population distribution such as Indonesia, internal relocation away from densely populated areas to outlying districts is a common response. In studying the table of population indicators, look at Singapore in contrast to the rest of the countries. Very much on one end of the spectrum, while Laos is a country on the other end. The graph shows the population pyramid for Singapore and the Philippines. Singapore has a very low birth rate and an aging population. As a result, its government encourages the immigration of skilled workers. Singapore also promotes the "Have three or more if you can afford it" campaign targeted to the most highly educated segment of its population and gives subsidies for having 3 or more children. The Philippines, by contrast, has a high birth rate and young population. This is due in part to the pressure from the Roman Catholic Church to cut funding for family planning programs, which in turn decrease the amount of information dispersed to people on family planning. The distribution of population in Indonesia shows a marked imbalance. Java, along with the neighboring island of Madura, is one of the world's most densely settled places, whereas most of the country's other islands remain rather lightly populated. As a result, the Indonesian government has encouraged the resettlement of Javanese and Madurese people to the outer islands, often paying the cost of relocation. This transmigration scheme has resulted in a somewhat more balanced population distribution pattern, but has also caused substantial environmental degradation and intensified several ethnic conflicts. The migration from Java between 1951 and 1993 is shown on the map. The satellite image shows the migrant settlement pattern visible for the Indonesian portion on the island of New Guinea. There are a few challenges that accompany these relocation schemes. One of them is deforestation on the new islands. The already indigenous people there are afraid they will lose their land rights, and there is a fear of failing crops in the new location from those who moved away from fertile soils where rice was easy to grow. Southeast Asia is not heavily urbanized. Southeast Asia is not a heavily urbanized region. Even Thailand retains a rural flavor, which is somewhat unusual for a country that has experienced so much industrialization. Bangkok, Thailand saw the development of an impressive skyline during its boom years from the late 1970s through the late 1990s. Older and more traditional buildings, especially Buddhist temples, are still found in many areas as shown in the photo. Several Southeast Asian countries have primate cities, which are single, large urban settlements that have 2 or more times the population of the second largest city in the country. Some primate cities in the region include Rangoon, Burma, Manila, the Philippines, and Bangkok, Thailand. Unfortunately, the growth in urban primacy causes many issues, such as housing shortages, congestion, and pollution. Many people are forced to live in squatter settlements without basic services. Most cities now are urging growth of secondary cities to alleviate these issues. The most unique city in this region has to be Singapore. Singapore, forming one of the world's few city-states, is the economic and technological hub of the region. It is very small and extremely crowded. Despite its high population density, Singapore has devoted almost half of its area to open spaces. The country consists of one main island and some 60 smaller islands as shown in the map. The photo shows a panoramic view of the downtown area, which is noted for its careful planning and modern architecture. Video question number 2. Please pause the video and answer the following. Explain urban primacy and the challenges primate cities encounter. Why and how is Singapore different from other primate cities in the region? In your own words, using the text as a guide, be thorough and specific with your answer. Unlike many other world regions, Southeast Asia lacks the historical dominance of a single civilization. Instead, the region has been a meeting ground for cultural traditions from South Asia, China, the Middle East, Europe, and even North America. As a result, the modern cultural geography of this diverse region reflects a long history of borrowing and combining external influences. Historically, these influences came in waves, beginning about 2,000 years ago when South Asians helped local rulers establish Hinduism. However, Hinduism mostly faded, but the Hindu epic called the Ramayana remains a cultural feature to this day. The second wave was in the form of Theravada Buddhism, which is closely associated with Sri Lanka and is the foundation of the people of Burma, Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia. Protests by Buddhist monks and nuns have become common in Thailand and Burma, as shown in the photo on the right. The monks are protesting attacks on the Buddhist temples in Bangladesh, carried out by Muslim extremists after a Buddhist man posted anti-Muslim photos on Facebook. The third wave involved Islam by 1650, which replaced Hinduism and Buddhism in Malaysia and Indonesia. Indonesia is the world's most populated Muslim country. The photo on the left depicts an Indonesian mosque, and the fourth wave happened when the Chinese migrated in masses in the 19th and 20th centuries. The elite in the Philippines is often referred to as the Chinese mestizo, being a mix of Chinese and Filipino descent. In addition, Christianity arrived in the late 19th century through missionaries. Southeast Asia is one of the world's most religiously diverse regions. Most of the mainland is predominantly Buddhist, with Theravada Buddhism prevailing in Burma, Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia, and Mahayana Buddhism, a form combined with other elements of the so-called Chinese religious complex prevailing in Vietnam. The Philippines is primarily Christian, but the rest of the insular Southeast Asia is primarily Muslim. Substantial Muslim minorities are found in the Philippines, Thailand, and Burma. Animist and Christian minorities can be found in remote areas throughout the region, especially in Indonesia's portion of the large island of New Guinea. A vast number of languages are found in Southeast Asia, but most are tribal tongues spoken by only a few thousand people. In the mainland area, the site of 3 major language families, The central lowlands of each country are dominated by people speaking the national languages: Burmese in Burma, Thai in Thailand, Lao in Laos, and Vietnamese in Vietnam. Singapore encourages the use of Mandarin Chinese and supports English. Almost all languages in insular Southeast Asia belong to the Austronesian linguistic family. There were no dominant languages here before the creation of such national tongues as Filipino and Bahasa Indonesia in the mid-20th century. One language, however, overshadows all others in the insular area, and that is Malay in Malaysia. This language was spread historically by merchants and seafarers. As a result, it became a common trade language, or lingua franca, and is used and understood throughout most of the insular realm. The photo shows the Burmese script on the Buddhist temple. This script has characters with round shapes, supposedly because the palm leaves that were originally used as writing surfaces would have been split by straight lines. Burma's script, like those of Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia, can be traced back to a writing system from ancient India. For the most part, this region welcomes globalization in the culture. Performers from the Philippines who have long adopted global musical styles are often in demand abroad. Charisse, as shown in the photo on the left, is a young singer who rose to fame on the basis of her YouTube videos. She has performed extensively in other Asian countries and has appeared on the U.S. television show Glee. Furthermore, a fast-paced game that might be considered something of a cross between volleyball and soccer, Sepak Takraw, originated in Thailand and Malaysia, as shown in the photo on the right. The sport is now played throughout the region and increasingly in other parts of the world as well. Video question number 3. Please pause the video and answer the following. Which countries have been most receptive to foreign cultural influences, and in what ways? In your own words, using the text as a guide, be thorough and specific with your answer. The countries of Southeast Asia have managed to solve most of their border disputes and other sources of potential conflicts through ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Although one such dispute remains, which is over the Spratly Islands. ASEAN experiences tension with China over the Spratly Islands of the South China Sea, which is said to have a potential of rich oil reserves in the adjacent waters. Internal disputes, however, mostly focused on issues of religious and ethnic diversity, continue to plague several of the region's states, particularly Indonesia and Burma. One such conflict in Indonesia is the Grasberg mine. Grasberg, located in the Indonesian province of Papua, is the world's largest gold mine and third largest copper mine. Employing more than 19,000 people, Grasberg is of great economic importance to Indonesia. It is also highly polluting, generating 253,000 tons of residue per day, and is thus opposed by many local inhabitants. Like most regions before colonialism through European invasion, much of this region was ruled by indigenous kingdoms. The Portuguese were the first Europeans who were lured there by the cloves and nutmeg in eastern Indonesia. With the exception of Thailand, all of the region was under Western colonial rule by the early 1900s. The Netherlands had the largest empire in the region by the 1700s, covering the territory that was later to become Indonesia. France maintained a substantial imperial realm in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, as did Britain in Burma and Malaysia, including Singapore and Brunei. The Philippines was colonized by Spain, but passed to the control of the United States in 1898. Eventually, all gained independence in the 1900s through growing nationalism and resistance to European rule. Initially, France was reluctant to leave Vietnam, and in doing so, resistance to French rule was organized primarily by communistic groups that were deeply rooted in northern Vietnam, led by Ho Chi Minh. By 1954, the French left after about 10 years of war. At that time, an International Peace Council in Geneva decided that Vietnam would be divided into two countries, North and South, known as the Geneva Peace Accord. As a result, communistic leaders came to power in North Vietnam, allied with China and the Soviet Union, and South Vietnam emerged as an independent, capitalistic-oriented state with close ties to the United States. However, peace did not prevail between the North and the South. During this time, North Vietnam sent troops and aid to rebels in South Vietnam through the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which was an ill-defined network of forest passages through Laos and Cambodia. The United States was fearful that if Vietnam fell to communism, then the rest of the countries in the region would as well, called the domino theory, and therefore intervene. Unfortunately, the United States failed to gain control over much of the countryside despite its military power and presence in the country, and through secret negotiations withdrew from the war. Gradually, South Vietnam lost control of key areas and North Vietnam seized power with a communistic victory over both. At the same time, the Khmer Rouge, a Cambodian communist guerrilla group, gained considerable power in Cambodia and installed one of the most brutal regimes of the world. They executed the most wealthy and educated people and forced city dwellers into the countryside to become peasants. The goal of the Khmer Rouge was to create a wholly new agrarian society by returning to what they call Year Zero. Today, Cambodia is officially a constitutional monarchy with an elected government, and corruption is widespread. Burma has been a hotbed of ethnic conflict for the past 60 years as well. Many ethnic conflicts exist between people of Burma and the Burmese government, a repressive military regime since 1988. This regime is resented by most of the population and is seen as a Burma empire seeking to impose its cultural norms on everyone regardless of people's original ethnicity. Although the central lowlands of Burma are primarily populated by people of the dominant Burman ethnic group as shown in the map, the peripheral highlands and the southeastern lowlands are home to the numerous non-Burman people. These rebel ethnic groups have sought to maintain authority over their own cultural traditions, lands, and resources. Economic stagnation and political repression by the central government have intensified these conflicts. Yet there is hope. More recently, Burma has undergone major changes, making progress towards becoming a democracy. Significantly, in 2011, its government released the Democratic opposition leader and Nobel Peace Prize recipient Aung San Suu Kyi, as shown in the photo, from house arrest, allowing her to participate in the political process. She has recently declared her intentions of running for the presidency of Burma in 2015. Video question number 4. Please pause the video and answer the following. Explain why Burma suffered from so many ethnic conflicts over the past 50 years. In your own words, using the text as a guide, be thorough and specific with your answer. Southeast Asia today is a region of strikingly uneven economic and social development. Some countries, such as Indonesia, have experienced both booms and busts. Others, such as Burma, Laos, and East Timor, missed the expansion of the 1980s and 1990s and remain impoverished. Oil-rich Brunei and technologically sophisticated Singapore, on the other hand, remain two of the world's most prosperous countries. Specifically, Singapore has been one of the greatest development successes in the region. This city-state was transformed from an entrepot port city where goods are imported, stored, and transported out to one of the world's most prosperous and modern states. Burma, in comparison, is one of the most impoverished countries due to continual warfare, economic policies, and low global trade, but has a large potential due to its natural resources. In the Philippines, the situation is somewhat more complicated. The Philippines used to be the most developed country in the region, but Ferdinand Marcos, who ruled from 1968 to 1986, squandered billions while failing to enact programs conducive to development. During his reign, the Marcos regime instituted a crony capitalism in which friends received favors while perceived enemies were punished. Two examples of economic and social development are in Malaysia and Singapore. Many foreign companies have established the high-tech manufacturing facilities in Malaysia as shown in the photo on the left. Most of their factories are located in the western part of peninsular Malaysia. Despite its free market approach to economics, the government of Singapore has invested heavily in public housing. Many Singaporeans live in buildings similar to the ones shown in the photo on the right. Levels of Health, education, and other aspects of human development vary widely across the region. As human development figures shown in the map indicate, Singapore, Brunei, Malaysia have reached high levels of development, whereas Burma, Cambodia, and East Timor lag well behind. There are a few development issues to note. One is the redevelopment projects in Cambodia. Several conflicts have emerged in Cambodia's booming capital city, Phnom Penh, as slum areas are cleared to make way for development projects. In the photo on the left, a woman wearing a helmet tries to stop a bulldozer from demolishing her home, while her daughters try to pull her away from the dangerous machine. The other is Thailand's sex tourism. Thailand has one of the highest rates of prostitution in the world. Most prostitutes cater to a local clientele, but those working in Bangkok's infamous Patpong district are usually hired by foreign men. Prostitution in Thailand is associated with high rates of HIV infection and with the brutal exploitation of women and girls. Levels of globalization vary tremendously across Southeast Asia. Whereas Singapore and Malaysia are closely linked to the global economy, Burma is still relatively isolated. With Burma's recent political transformation, however, it is beginning to experience more extensive globalization. Most of the governments in this region have placed a high priority on basic education. Literacy rates are relatively high in most countries of the region, but less success, however, has been realized in higher education. Therefore, many students are forced to study abroad. Historically, the region has been characterized by relatively high levels of gender equity. Some contend that women actually had a higher social position than men. For example, the Minangkabau of western Sumatra are known for their large traditional houses as shown in the photo, and for the high social position of women in their society. However, as world religions have spread in this region, that tended to put men in the dominant position, and therefore the gender equity gap has closed considerably. Video question number 5. Please pause the video and answer the following. Describe why Singapore and Burma are on either end of the economic development spectrums. In your own words, using the text as a guide, be thorough and specific with your answer.